Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is the story I'm telling myself. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. Hello, another Tuesday is here, and that means a new episode of the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast. I'm your host, Rita Ernst. I'm so happy that you are with us today. If you are here for the live, thank you. We love having you with us. Please introduce yourself in the comments. This show is for you. We want to hear your thoughts and your questions. And please help me in welcoming our guest, Nic. Nic, welcome to the show. I'm going to let you give your intro. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today. Wow, where do I start? So my name is Nic Angai-Galindo, but everyone calls me Nic, except my husband calls me Nicole like once a year when he's annoyed with me. I think that's pretty good odds. A little bit about my story. I was diagnosed bipolar 2, my goodness gracious me, about 30 years ago. It seems that it does run in my family, a little bit of mental illness. My dad's bipolar 1, and I have several family members that also are diagnosed with various things, OCD, schizophrenia. So I am actually a hybrid publisher, and I left my job last year early to start my company, Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing House.
Well, we are so excited to have you on the show with us. Leslie's greeting you. Hello, Leslie. Hello, Felipe. Nice to have you. I'm sorry. I'm removing a couple of things on our stream because it's freezing up your end, Nicole. So now we get you back. Hello at gbwpublishing.com. This is where Nicole would like to link up with you if you would like to continue this conversation with her. You'll also find her out on LinkedIn. Jackie is with us. Hey, Jackie. So glad to have you with us today. Michael, glad to be watching. And we are glad you're watching too. And I love your puppy. I'm a big dog person. So that picture of you is fabulous. And Meryl is with us. Hey, Meryl, you've been such a favorite participant in the show. Glad that you are back with us today, and another fan of Nicole's. So, Nic, we're going to jump in and talk about your bipolar disorder and sort of navigating life with that, because it is I believe Mental Health Awareness Week. And I just love when I see these random things, because when we planned the show and picked the state, we did not do this, but I'm telling you, the universe is looking out for this show. It just keeps aligning things. I mean, last week it was episode 55 on May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. I mean, you just cannot make this stuff up. The way the universe is conspiring to support the show and make these wonderful things happen. So Sharon is with us. Sharon Love has been on the show with us, and a friend of yours, Misha. Thank you for joining us. We got so many people. I love this enthusiasm. Woohoo for dog people. I agree. Good evening and happy to have you with us, Salim. And Michael is in the house. So, friends, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, people did not talk about mental health. It was not considered part of normal health. I mean, you could get cancer and that was shameful. You could have a congestive heart failure and that was a little less shameful. But mental health, that was completely taboo. I mean, people just did not acknowledge, did not talk about it. It just meant that there was something fundamentally flawed with you in most of society. And so Nicole is here to talk about her journey with us, because we are working really hard to overcome the stigma and allow people to not only acknowledge, but use their mental health as an opportunity to connect and be more fully present with the people around them. And Nicole is going to be an excellent guide. So where would you like to start the story, Nicole?
I guess before I start, I do want to say hello to all of my friends in the audience and to anyone that I haven't met as yet. Thanks so much for being here. Unfortunately, you're right. We've made a lot of strides since those days. And I say those days because I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a third world country. Um, and unfortunately, medicine is not as advanced as it is here in the United States. I live in New York. Back then, yes, it was indeed something you did not talk about. Did not talk about your struggles. Depression was not a thing. My grandmother is old school, or was old school. She's passed now. And it would just be, she's such a moody child, shake it off, go suck on a candy kind of thing. Um, and so it's not something that I really understood for a very long time. I'm very fortunate. My family is very supportive. My father being diagnosed bipolar 1, they were aware, but not necessarily educated. So I'm happy to say now that the last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life. At the end
I
of
love that. I love that. Look, friends, there is hope. There is a path forward. Please go ahead, Nic.
there absolutely is, and that path does not look the same for everyone, and it should not, and you should not feel that it needs to. So at the end of 2020, I fell into the worst depression of my life. I actually went out on short-term disability from my job for 2 months, and it was the first, and I know it's going to be the last time that ever happens. I quit drinking, went back on my medication. I take 3 and have not missed a day since. So, luckily for me, the cocktail.
Let's pause there for a minute. First of all, I just want to add Felipe's comment here. He says, Nic has done so much great work around mental wellness and has made a significant impact to me and many others. And I know that is true. It's why it's such an honor to have her on the show. One of the things that you talked about, stop drinking. I mean, when we are operating in this place of feeling shame and unworthiness about our own self-limitation, about our flaws.
Mhm.
And that's what we're talking about hiding our flaws in this episode. Often what happens is people self-medicate. They start looking around them. They start finding things that help them escape. It's a form of escapism. And I know this because I have somebody in my immediate family who has struggled with mental health and was using marijuana heavily to try to escape from the reality of that. So, can you talk a little bit about the story that you were telling yourself back before 2020 about who you could be and who you couldn't be in your outward facing self?
It's funny. I woke up this morning with this thought in my head that you can't be anything to anyone, but you can be everything to yourself.
Oh, wow. That is a very deep, meaningful, and big thought. You
It
can
is,
be
considering I've
everything
never thought of
to
it.
yourself. Yes, imagine if every morning we looked in the mirror and we embraced that thought.
I don't know where it came from. It's not something I've thought about before. And I knew I was coming on the show. And I was asking myself, okay, Nic, you've been telling a different story the last 5 years of your life. What was the story you were telling yourself before that? And I think that our story changes, and it does change. It's not over until we say that it is. And that usually isn't the case until we close our eyes for the last time.
Right.
But it's easy to get stuck in a chapter of your life and continue to pen that chapter thinking there isn't more, there isn't another chapter. And that is so very far from the truth. I had very supportive parents, a lot of friends growing up, yet there was always something at the back of my mind that said there was something wrong with me. whether it was the moodiness, missing out on things because I was in bed crying, at 16 getting dressed to go to another party and then backing out of it. Eventually, my mom got me a psychologist who said that I had something called psychosomatic illness. Now, I'm not a person that's ever been afraid to be in crowds, mind you. Then I worked myself up so much that I wouldn't go. I can't say whether or not that was all a part of the depression and the bipolar disorder because I did not get officially diagnosed till I was 26. I think for a long time, even though I felt something was wrong, I denied that it could have anything to do with what my father was going through. And I had to come to this realization that it's okay. If I don't embrace it, then I can't move on with my life. And my life, it just simply can't be defined by anyone else but myself. But it took a long time to get there. And I started to really view myself the way other people viewed me. What they saw and what they said became my reality. And that's another thing I was thinking about this morning as well. Again, pondering, coming on the show. Why is it that I allowed other people to need to make me smaller so they could be bigger? And if you read about generalized depression symptoms to the extent that they're debilitating, right? Because everybody experiences, I would say, bouts of depression in varying degrees based on what's happening, circumstantially and other things. It could be seasonal, whatever. But when you are waking up feeling as if you're 6 feet under consistently, I'm speaking about weeks and months, and your feet land on the floor when you wake up in the morning, but really they're not landing there. You don't even just go through the motions. You don't know how you're going through life. You just know that you're existing. And that's really all that you are, existing. And I think that I told myself a story that wasn't true because I let other people define who Nic was.
So you looked outside of yourself, and you allowed whatever the external information was flowing to you. You just absorbed that and took that in. And I have a very good friend who's been an office mate of mine, who's a practicing therapist and raising teenage girls. It's a tumultuous time for them, and her specialty is working with young people struggling with mental health. And I asked her once, how do you discern when it's just sort of normal and when it starts to cross the line into something clinical that might require treatment? And she said two really important things to me about anxiety and depression in particular, and mental well-being. And she said, one, you should think about seeking counseling or mental health services as part of your primary care, just like you would go for a checkup to check your cholesterol or to your annual exam. You should consider therapy as a practice of well-being that you can seek. And the second thing she said, but when acutely is when those thoughts and those feelings start to get in the way of you moving forward in your life as you normally would. When it starts to hold you back from doing the things, like you said, you're all dressed and ready to go, and then you can't get yourself out the door. When you put your feet on the floor, but you're not really present, mind, body, and soul in that moment, right? These are examples of things. And so for those of you that are listening, I think it's a good guidance and a way to think, because I think Nicole is naming something that is particularly important to understand. We all have, at times, we're going to be in our struggle, our mental struggles, and feel free to see that as an opportunity to go get that mental health checkup with a provider. But if those feelings are persisting and they are interrupting the normal flow of your life, please know that that is a time when you most definitely should seek assistance.
Yes, and I apologize. My staffy is working around being very bad right now if you're hearing scratching. She missed a walk.
Good morning, Tom. Glad to have you on the show with us.
So
I just want to pop this up real quick. Leslie says, this is a great example of the principle of autosuggestion to self and self-suggestion. We learn to repeat so that more people say it and more times than we think it's true, and it becomes true for ourselves. So we just get stuck in the groove, right? And the more times that we repeat it, the deeper the groove gets and the harder it is to interrupt this. And I think what people should understand about Nicole's story is Nicole was highly successful, right? I mean, you were flying high. Part of the definition that you shared with me of the story that you told yourself is, well, if I'm just excelling at work, then I'm excelling in life.
Yes, absolutely.
Until the day that you could not go to work anymore. And having this health issue, which was your diagnosis of bipolar disorder, that you didn't feel safe to necessarily speak out loud to others. Talk a little bit about that internal narrative that makes it feel unsafe for us to own that flaw.
So oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's our first guest dog appearance, and look at that. What a love.
This is Chief of Staff here of Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing. Okay, you need to come down now. Okay, yeah. So, my story is no different than many others in a sense, right? We start to establish our identity in our professional realm. We forget that we're a person before the professional. And we start to lead our lives or define success rather by the paycheck, by the promotions, by what the team's saying about you, by what your boss is saying about you. And I want to just digress a little bit. So we were talking about, how do you know when the depression is debilitating? How do you know when it's a problem? This is not just getting dressed and not being able to leave the house. This is flat out in a bed day after day, crying nonstop, not getting up, not eating, not taking a shower, not brushing your teeth, not anything, feeling nothing, except that you just don't want to be here anymore. Yet you haven't gone as far as the ideation of committing suicide. Now, with that said, I have attempted twice, when I was 15 and when, again, I was in my late 30s, no, early 40s, which isn't that long ago. I'm 49. When it gets to that point, you know something is grossly wrong. However, you are not in any mental capacity able to help yourself. The people around you who love you have to be the ones to observe that and help you. So just wanted to share that. In terms of work, when they share symptoms about being bipolar, they came from somewhere. These are studies. These are not just made up things. The guilt is ever present. The need to constantly be proving yourself because of the weak moments that you have is very, very real. The adrenaline rushes, whether it be viciness, in being flirtatious, in, dressing in such a way that you want to attract attention, gambling, drinking, all of these things are the viciness that comes along with that adrenaline rush. There were periods that I went through some of those. Thankfully, which perhaps is damaging in its own way, were the times that I went through those adrenaline rushes with respect to work. So work is what I was holding on to. The adrenaline came from doing better and better and better each time. But the better you did, the less you wanted to show any sign of weakness. So
Right.
the more you try to hide those tendencies and trying to explain away 3 months of not missing a day of work to all of a sudden missing 3 consecutive days of work with no explanation, with no doctor's note, it was very difficult. But I have been fortunate, very fortunate, that in the last 3 jobs, the last one, they were very understanding. And in fact, there were many people that worked there that had their own diagnoses. The one before that basically told me to shut up and not talk about it. And the one before that, they are the ones that started me being able to be a little bit open about it. Because I learned that one of the managers, her daughter was going through something similar, which allowed me to be a little more, able to talk about not everything, but that, I was having a day and I really wasn't myself. And who is this monster that showed up to work today? Where is Nic? So,
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we learn is that when we choose vulnerability, and you do have to be somewhat selective about that, but often what we find is we find connection in that vulnerability. We find others share stories and experiences, whether personally, directly, or through their connections. And it can counter some of the loneliness of that. Meryl is giving you a shout out here about your vulnerability in this chat, which is so very deserved. I think that one of the struggles for me when I feel like I am letting others down is that I'm also letting myself down. And so it's sort of like the double sucker punch, right? I have the shame of letting other people down, and then I have the feeling of unworthiness that I'm letting myself down as well. And that narrative can really take over and spiral pretty easily. You're nodding your head. So does that resonate with your experience as well?
yes. Oh, that spiral. It's something that we've all experienced and we're all capable of experiencing, diagnosed with a mental health issue or not. There is a difference between mental health and mental illness. Mental illness, something diagnosed and treatable. Mental health, our general mental health every single day. We all have self-talk. And it is important that we recognize that sometimes we're going to have negative self-talk, not beat ourselves up about it, but find our way to loop it back. Why is this happening? Why am I talking to myself this way? This is not the way that I talk to myself anymore, and change that talk. But I think we need to accept that we are human and it happens. I think too many people want to say they don't have that negative self-talk, but they do. And the first thing to your growing awareness of anything is being able to admit it or acknowledge it. Acknowledging does not mean that you accept. There's a difference. Part of what I do through my publishing is publishing stories around breaking stigmas. And right now I'm working on volume 2 of We Choose to Be More Than Our Diagnoses. So people say, I don't like it. Why do you put a label? Why does everything have to be inspected so deeply all the time? Take it for what it is. At the end of the day, I am diagnosed with something. You go to the doctor, something's wrong physically, medically, they diagnose you and you treat your diagnosis. So I have a diagnosis and it's being treated. I'm choosing to do
Right.
more.
And there should be no shame in that. And it should be something that, I mean, people talk about their cancer journeys, people talk about organ transplant journeys. I mean, this can and should be accepted in the same way, in my opinion. And the labeling, to me, is like anything else. It is that acknowledging. The first step to any healing is you have to own where you are.
And look, I label myself when I say I have a diagnosis. Okay, why is that your problem? It's not. I am no one stigma. I am the stigma.
Right.
The stigma starts with me. I allow you to stigmatize me by choosing to view myself the way you view me, and I choose not to. So I am not your stigma. And if I want to say I have a diagnosis and I treat my diagnosis, then that's on me, the way I say it. And everybody has to be okay with how they say what they say. Again, it comes down to acknowledging. I have no shame. I take 3 medications every day, and it's down the hatch in 3 seconds, and the rest of my day is great. You take vitamins, don't you? I mean,
Exactly. What I think this goes back to, Nic, is that we we had for many decades in the last century, especially toward the end of the century, we had this never let them see you sweat, show no vulnerability mantra in work, especially. Perfection was the only acceptable thing. If you showed flaw, you were at great risk of being dismissed just based on one small flaw that may have nothing to do with your work ethic, your capability, your knowledge, your expertise, any of those things. One missed comma or period in an email could ruin your opportunity, because you're not paying enough attention. And we had all these stories about that. Then we had sort of at the very end, after the dot-com burst, we had all these people coming forward talking about how failure is rocket fuel forward. And we began to shift the narrative a little bit around it only counted if you were perfect. And we had all of these people who were like really owning the learning journey of failing and failing up. This idea of failing up really started to emerge. And then we've progressed that now to the place where we are actually more likely to reject perfectionism, especially in social media and places like that, as inauthentic, as something less than what we want to see. And we're more willing to accept one another where we are. And so we've been able to begin to shift the conversation a little bit. And I really think it comes to this shift that we are seeing in the workplace as well. But one of the most important things is that you didn't stop with just the acknowledging. The next step that you took is, once you were willing to own your flaw, you turned your flaw into purpose. You really claimed that and made it something new. Talk to people a little bit about that shift in the story that you told yourself.
So I started by recognizing that I'm not a mistake. There wasn't something about me that should not have been. We are all who we are, and every part of who we are makes up the person. Again, it comes down to choice. And sometimes it is not as an intentional choice as people think it is, and sometimes it doesn't need to be. Sometimes it's something that propels you toward that. I think in my case, something did, and that would have been falling on breaking my knee in 4 places 5 years ago. Was it 5 years ago? I forget now. That was part of it. You know, part of it was also getting myself out of some toxic situations, a workplace, a somewhat family environment I was in. But the rest of it was me. And it's okay to need help. You're going to need help. But once you get to a point where you have a toe in, you got to work hard and find that footing. Because the one day you plant your foot firmly on the floor, you are never going to want to just have a toe in again. You are always going to be striving towards that. So continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection, Einstein. And I think it's okay to strive toward perfection, knowing that perfection isn't feasible. But if it keeps you improving, that's fine. I don't understand the reason for the extremes. I wonder if it's because I am bipolar and I got that North Pole, that South Pole, not hills and valleys, spikes and plunges. I haven't had those in a very long time. But there became something that was so bad about the extremes. And in a sense, those extremes have helped me once I found my voice tap into who I am as a writer, in the sense that I can express what I'm feeling in a way that I don't want people to just, I don't want to just be seen and heard through what I write. I want to be felt. I want my writers to be felt. And that comes from being able to feel a depth of emotion that shouldn't be, that you think shouldn't be, right? To the point that you simply don't want to be here anymore. I mean, like, how do you look at your husband? How do you look at your child and say, I don't want to be here anymore? It's not the right thing to be thinking or feeling, but you are. Once that door opens and you start building self-awareness, slowly at first, little things. If you lean into it, you listen to that intuition, you tune out all the voices, you make yours the loudest, you're going to start listening to it more and more and more, and your awareness is going to start building more and more and more. And you're going to sit now when you have those moments and take yourself through the loop that I spoke about. Why am I feeling this way? Would my husband feel this way in this situation? Okay, so then it's a natural reaction. It's not something's wrong with me, and in 5 minutes I'm going to fall apart. Right? And you talk yourself back through out of it. And again, you're never ever going to be doing it alone. It's just as time has gone by, I've been able to do it alone more. So I do lean on people when I need to. I do pick up the phone when I need to talk to someone. But I am able to do that a lot less frequently now because I can lean into myself. But it takes work. There's no magic pill. There's no magic talk therapy. I know a lot of people do self-healing through breath work and other things. You find what works for you. And I dare to say it's not going to work 100% of the time. So you have to make sure that you have your reserve, the one that you built in to back yourself up.
Well, you're echoing what my guest Jerry Sepinoza Hudson said a couple of episodes back, and about finding modalities that work for you. Right. There is not one path. It is going to be unique to you, and you might need to try many different things, and you keep what's working for you and you discard the rest. And then sometimes you've got to shift it up because you are an evolving person as well. We've got a couple things in the comments I want to throw out here. One is a question from Leslie. Have you forgotten that you've taken your pills? Sometimes I think I have and I can't remember.
Yeah, and I love to say I haven't missed a day since, which is pretty much accurate, 99.9%. But it's so funny. Sunday, I wasn't feeling quite myself. I had my son over for Mother's Day. And on the drive back, after we dropped him off, I just started feeling a little odd. And I said to my husband, wonder if I forgot to take my meds this morning. Because during the week, I have this little routine, right? I get up, I shower, I get dressed, I slap some makeup on and I take my meds and everything's. And then on the weekend, sometimes I skip the makeup and I'm not getting dressed. And so I'm like, and I have in this orange bag. It's been in this orange zipper bag for like ever. And I think, did I take out the orange bag this morning? And the thing is, my medications now are so strong compared to what I used to be on, which is one antidepressant, where it would actually take a couple of weeks for me to start to feel withdrawal symptoms. It's weird. By the end of the day, I start to feel weird. Like everything's moving in slow motion. Like
Hmm.
something's off. Like, when you're looking at asphalt and the sun's hitting it and the heat's rising and you see the little heat waves, those are the types of symptoms that I have when I'm going through withdrawal. I don't know what other people experience, but that's how I tend to know. So, yes, Leslie, I do believe that I have forgotten. Do I remember that I've forgotten? No. But
Yeah,
I'm
I think that's why so many people like those pill sorters because then you can just go to your pill sorter and see if you got pills in there for the day. This other thing that Leslie added, which is so important because she is so right here. We are meaning making machines. It is part of our humanness that we need to understand what is happening around us, and our brains will work very hard to make understanding. So labeling is just a natural part of what we do. And it's important to understand that because sometimes that labeling is negative.
mhm.
It is not a health, it's not necessarily helpful and it should be examined. So that as Nick was saying, asking yourself, well, would other people be feeling this? Is this normal? Is it, it's perfect. Like you can't always take it face value. And this is what the story I'm telling myself is all about. That first story that you tell yourself isn't accurate just because it's the first meaning that your brain landed upon. Sometimes you gotta dig a little bit deeper. Meryl adds, I can attest 100% that Nick and her published authors all descriptively express their feelings through their personal writing style from the heart. And we will drop links for you in the show notes
It means a lot, Mira.
to the stuff
Really
that
good.
Nick is publishing.
It means a lot what you
And
said there because I'm not a studied writer. I'm not a terribly experienced publisher, and my friends hate when I say that. I mean, I would have worked with 150 writers by the time this ninth anthology publishes at the end of this month. What I mean by that is guiding brilliant writers. The brilliance are the stories. The writing can be learned, guided. We go to school for that. You can get better as you practice. And a big part of what I want in my publishing is not to change people's voice. People come there, nice 75% are new writers. It is not my job to push you into a writing style. You write, you will find your style over time, right? I can't write your story for you. I did not live it. I am not living it. So I owned my story. I don't want anything more for any of my writers to do than own their story. When they ask me, what do you expect? I expect nothing. I expect you to put pen to paper and write. That's all. So, Meryl, I do really appreciate that comment from you.
well, and we're coming up on our time here, but Nicole, would you say that writing has been an effective part of your ability to really examine and perhaps rewrite or shift out of the groove in terms of the story that you tell yourself?
Yes, absolutely. But it for me is more of a reinforcement.
Mm.
It had already started to take form in my mind. So it was a reinforcement. And it's, again, I just want to say that I don't, another realization I'm coming to lately is this thing about extremes. Everything, every word, every action can have a positive and negative connotation. Okay? That being said, wield your words carefully. They have the power to make or break people. And when you stop to consider the way you talk to yourself, if you talked to someone that way, what would you do to them?
I love that. Yes. Yes. We are often the most hypercritical about ourselves. Often when we're lashing out at other people, we are simultaneously lashing out at ourselves. The flaws that we feel the most shame, the things that we are hiding in ourselves, when we see those in other people, we often go and attack of those things, and it is just the outward expression of the self-flagellation that often goes on inside our own heads.
Yes.
on a nonstop reel.
I think, like you say, that comes from a lot of judgment. I judge. I don't want to, but I catch myself and I try to fix that. Course correct. As long as you're trying to change it, you are improving, you are doing better. This thing about judgment, we do judge ourselves harshly. I don't anymore. I let it go. I don't get mad. I'm not trying to get even. I'm not looking around me. I'm looking ahead of me. I'll touch quickly on this comparison game because it's something that I think hurts us very, very much. As long as you measure yourself by someone else's yardstick, you will never be successful. Define what that success looks like to you. Okay, if it's $1 million in the bank, it's $1 million in the bank. If it's 100,000 in the bank, but living your purpose, then that's what it is. Don't see why it has to be one or the other, why we judge each other the way that we do.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that is the perfect way to end our conversation. Everybody has flaws. They may not have the same flaws that you have, but when you look and you start comparing yourself to other people, you may be comparing yourself to their highlight reel, but they also have flaws too. And in the episode is titled, "What Flaws Are You Hiding?" And the invitation is to own your flaws, accept your flaws, find purpose in moving with the acknowledgement of those flaws, and instead of allowing your fixation on those flaws to keep you withholding parts of yourself. And with that, I want to thank you, Nic, for joining us on the show today and for being willing to share your experience with everyone. We will have all the links for you in the show notes. So if you're with us live, Nic and I will be in the comments after we finish to interact with you, but also you can go over to your favorite podcast platform and grab the show notes over there to connect with Nic and the amazing work that she's doing. And perhaps you have a story that needs to be a part of her next anthology. I know she would love to hear from you. Final words before we go, Nic?
Two things. Somebody told me this: every night when you go to sleep, you die, and every morning when you wake up, you're born again. Now, I know that sounds a little, but do things that way to some extent. Don't stress over what you didn't do yesterday, what didn't happen yesterday. Carry it over. Today's a new day. You can get it done. There is nothing wrong with any of us. The things that we think are disadvantages or, they're areas for improvement. Identify them as areas for improvement. Don't criticize yourself for them. And for every time you go to criticize yourself, give yourself 3 wins, because there are lots of wins. We're just not looking for them. So that's my closing thoughts.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. All right, friends, thank you. I'll see you back here next Tuesday again for the next episode of The Story I'm Telling Myself. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you love this episode, leave us those 5 stars and be sure to share this with a friend. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. See you back here next week.